Unrest continues to mark the one-year anniversary of the shooting of an unarmed black teenager in Ferguson, Missouri. What did the class of 2015 Yali Fellows think of their experience? We'll have details. And the youngest member of the Kardashian clan celebrates a milestone. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Linord Moudou. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makore is off today. Peace negotiations aimed at ending South Sudan's political stalemate are ongoing in Ethiopia. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development has been mediating peace talks with a view toward ending the conflict between forces loyal to President Salva Kiir and supporters allied with his former deputy, Riek Machar. For more on the peace talks, I'm joined on the phone from Addis Ababa by John Tanza, host and managing editor of VOA's South Sudan in Focus radio program. Where do we stand currently in the peace talk process? John, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you very much, Linord. To answer your question, 20 minutes ago, the delegates came out from a closed-door meeting which lasted for like 2 hours. And the meeting was basically for the delegates from the working party to discuss the issues that they have disagreed on. You remember they started meeting on the 6th of this month, and this is the second week of their meeting, and they have disagreed on one key issue about how the security arrangement will be during a transitional period if they sign a peace agreement next week. And one of the proposals was that the capital city of South Sudan, that is Juba, be free of weapons. That is, they suggest the IGAD Plus compromise document is suggesting that Juba should be demilitarized and key installations in the town be under the supervision of the foreign forces, basically forces from the IGAD countries. And the government is saying no, they cannot entrust the security of the city in the hands of foreign forces. And so the government delegation have disagreed that they will not accept demilitarization of Juba. The rebels are saying Juba should be demilitarized because South Sudanese have lost hope in the South Sudan army. But so that is where things stand right now.
Okay, well, there has been a lot of pressure on both sides to really come to some type of agreement by the deadline of August 17. So how do we go from all these different issues that they disagree on to getting there to some type of perhaps understanding?
Well, the mood here being the negotiations, the move agency being, portrayed by two parties. Both of them are all saying that they are serious, they are committed, and they want to bring an end to the conflict. Okay. And I want to believe that they are living to their words because, as you can see, they've been there from 9 a.m., and they just left 20 minutes ago, around 6:45.
Okay.
So, and the talks are progressing.
Let's say if a peace deal is met, quickly because we're going to wrap up, if a peace deal is met by the deadline August 17, what will it be sustainable given past experiences of failure?
Well, the sustainability of any peace agreement depends on the inclusivity of everybody. If everybody is included on board, it will be sustainable. But for now, other members of other political parties were barred from attending the peace talks by the government in Juba. So the sustainability of any peace deal is in question.
Okay. We're done. Thank you so much, John Tanza, for reporting from Addis Ababa. That was VOA's John Tanza. Now, a British court has dropped a controversial extradition case against Rwanda's intelligence chief, who is wanted in Spain for war crimes. Monday's ruling means that General Karenzi Karake, a key figure in the government of President Paul Kagame, can return home. The London court said that British law does not permit it to hear about alleged offenses committed outside the country by non-British nationals. Britain arrested Karake in June, acting on a Spanish arrest warrant that alleged the general was involved in the killing of a group of Spanish medical volunteers in the aftermath of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Now, the UN Humanitarian Rights Office reports that many detainees in Mali charged with serious crimes, including war crimes, have been released from prison. The UN says it fears many other similar releases are in the offing. The agency says amnesty for people implicated in such serious offenses is against international law. Ferguson, Missouri continues to be a flashpoint 1 year after the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown, an unarmed black man who was shot by a white police officer. As VOA's Ken Frabot reports, declaring a state of emergency in the U.S. city did not stop clashes between demonstrators and police during a second night of unrest.
As night fell on Ferguson, Missouri,
no justice! No peace!
Tensions between demonstrators and police escalated once again. Dozens of protesters repeatedly defied police orders to stay off the street.
This is the St. Louis County Police Department. Get off the roadway.
And stopped traffic on West Florissant Avenue, the scene of riots and looting over the last year. As further unrest marked the anniversary of the shooting death of Michael Brown, some in the crowd in Ferguson, not far from the spot where he was shot, felt the awareness stemming from that incident has empowered them.
So they say what we're doing is excessive, but the death of Mike Brown brought an issue that's been swept under the rug to the light.
The activists, the protesters, the people who are really down for change, a lot has changed with them. Like a lot of us have been awakened in a way we couldn't even have imagined.
But for as much change as Tiffany Shawn welcomes, she says some things have stayed the same.
Get the line past them, protect them.
Not a lot has changed with how the police are reacting toward us and behaving with us. Not a lot has changed when it comes to that.
The beefed-up police presence in Ferguson comes one night after officers shot and seriously wounded one suspect they say opened fire on them, leading to charges against the suspect and a state of emergency declared in St. Louis County to stem further violence. Those on the ground in Ferguson for another night of protests shrugged off those concerns.
Violence is going to happen. I don't want to minimize it at all because it's a problem. No one agrees with it, but it's going to happen regardless.
And when you have a body of people this large, you know what I'm saying, it's bound for there to be people who don't like each other, you know what I'm saying?
In the face of flying water bottles and rocks, police moved quickly to keep large numbers of protesters from filling the streets and stopping traffic, something they accomplished on a busy highway earlier in the day.
This is a lot milder than last year. I mean, last year it was unexpected. It was a larger body of people, so the outcome was a little more dramatic, you know what I'm saying? This is more positive than last year.
Police have appealed for calm as more protests are expected. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Ferguson, Missouri.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship Program has come to an end for most fellows, but 100 others remain in the U.S. to complete their internship in various institutions. VOA's Esther Gitiwi-Ewart interviewed some of the participants and has our report.
The second class of President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative program is expected to be agents of positive change in Africa. And the fellows have clear objectives on how they can improve their countries upon their return. Pamela Kanora is from Tanzania, where efforts to put in place a new constitution before October's general elections have failed. Her main focus is to improve the credibility of elections in Africa.
Democracy is a process and not an end in itself, but the quality of democracy really translates on the type of leaders we put into power. So the credibility of election is very vital.
Ethiopia, on the other hand, has been on the spotlight for a poor human rights record, imprisoning of journalists and cracking down on dissent. Margie Hailemariam says she was lucky to be selected for this year's Mandela Fellowship Program and wished to share her knowledge with the youth in Ethiopia.
Yeah, the system is not very comfortable for the youth at the moment. We have people in prison, as you've mentioned. We don't have independent media, and when it comes to social media again, though people post, blog or write on their own social media outlets, still that one is a restricted one.
Margie, however, believes that Ethiopia needs a pragmatic approach to engage the youth without necessarily waiting for official initiatives.
We can work with the existing youth platforms so that we can enhance the participation of youth in different aspects.
And while many young people on the continent face various challenges, Somalia's youth, particularly girls, face some of the most difficult challenges. Yali fellow Faiza Abdirashid currently works for a Somali think tank which was recently established to deal with youth issues.
This is sincerely a prestigious opportunity, and which every youth need to maximize and utilize. I mean, whatever we get back from here, taking it back home.
Faiza appeals to Somalia's younger generation to stay home and make use of the opportunities they have while taking responsibility to move their country forward.
I need to see back home a good governance, youth participation in politics, youth participation in rebuilding Somalia, youth taking their lead and their position within the country.
And as Tanzanians prepare for the general elections in the coming months, Pamela Kanora says the youth appear to be more aware of their role and are actively engaged in the election process.
One bit that I want to encourage fellow youth, because it's very, very important, they should make sure that they have effective participation, not being lured by politicians, by small things for them that they'll forget the bigger picture, that you put this person in power for the next 5 years, and this will determine your well-being and the well-being of the country at large.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship's objective is to empower African youths through academic coursework, leadership training and networking. Esther Gido-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voafrica.com. Coming up, a top businessman talks about what it takes to be an entrepreneur in Africa. Stay with us.
From science and technology, here's What's New.
What's new? How about old school technique meeting new age technology? Charging your smartphone with a candle. Set it up by placing the charger on top of a two-tier stand and pour water into the charger. A lit candle goes under the charger. Plug your mobile phone into a USB port coming off the charger, and that's it.
You have a hot side, like a hot plate, and you have a cold plate, and you smash these generators together, and it's that temperature difference. It creates a diffusion of energy from the hot side to the cold side.
Andrew Burns, co-founder of the startup company Stower, says the charger puts out between 2 and 3 watts, about the same amount of power available from a USB port.
The power of a mobile handset and a smartphone is infinitely greater than a vacuum cleaner, and they only need tiny little bits of energy.
Candle power, keeping smartphones lit. That's what's new from the Voice of America. I'm Todd Grossans.
Now, Africa is flush with budding entrepreneurs, despite the many challenges of facing these startup companies. Eric Alexander wants to make that journey easier. He is a Haitian-born businessman with 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur. Alexander is CEO of Money Physicians, a US-based crowdfunding website that helps companies raise capital to jumpstart their dreams and their business. He recently sat down with Africa 54's Alexis Christoforos to talk about what it takes to be an entrepreneur in Africa.
Eric Alexander, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Eric, Africa's entrepreneurial spirit is alive and thriving. In fact, there was a new survey recently that showed sub-Saharan Africa leads the world rankings in entrepreneurial startup activity. What regions in particular are leading that entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, I know for sure that Nigeria, for example, have a huge intake in entrepreneurship on almost all sectors, but more importantly into the healthcare sector.
So we're seeing a lot of people with startups in the healthcare sector.
Right, because that's where most of the opportunities are right now, where the growth is needed. And there's a push toward universal healthcare. So that is driving a lot of the investment in entrepreneurship in that particular region.
We know that it's not easy to have a startup really wherever you come from, but in Africa in particular, there are lots of challenges. We have little government support, bureaucracy, lack of financing. So why do you think there is this entrepreneurial spirit, and how can people combat some of those challenges?
Well, the thing that entrepreneur will need the most is problems, right? Because without problems, it doesn't make sense to even start a business, because basically the reason you're starting is because you are solving some problems. So the more problems, the more opportunity. And that's why you see, as tremendous how the problems are in Africa, you're going to see even more entrepreneurs coming in and tackling those particular issues.
Coming from your perspective as a person who actually runs a crowdfunding site, what is some of your advice to these startups, people who are looking for funding?
Well, I'll say the most important thing is not to focus solely on the money, because you're going to need mentorship. It's going to be very important. My formula for investment, for example, for investing is, I call it MQ. Cube is money, marketing, and management. All those three has to come together to create success.
We're seeing that women, too, are a driving force behind entrepreneurship in Africa. Why do you think that is?
Well, you know, women have always played a very important role in in Africa, in the family in general. But now, more than ever, because of what entrepreneurship means, meaning that you're solving problems, they're able to have a greater say in terms of what's going on, and they have decided that they're going to take leadership and create and innovate on a social way to do that.
And would you agree that entrepreneurship is really the way out of poverty for Africa?
Well, and let me explain to you why. You know, every time an entrepreneur comes up with an idea, he has to create a team, and that's job creation automatically. All right? Job creation. One of the things that he does, he takes on the pressure of government. Okay, enable them to do better planning, because they don't have people pointing at them as much, right? So give the leaders a little bit of more time, more space to be able to do some greater thing for the country.
Well, Eric Alexander, CEO of Money Physicians, we look forward to speaking to you again when you're actually in Africa doing business with your crowdfunding site. So thank you so much for your insights.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
And I'm Alexis Christoforos for VOA News, Africa 54.
The countdown is underway to the United Nations Summit in September on the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Observers say the new Sustainable Development Agenda builds on the success of the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, which helped more than 700 million people escape poverty. The 8 MDGs adopted in 2000 aimed at an array of issues that included slashing poverty, disease, gender inequality, and access to water and sanitation by 2015. There has been progress, such as reducing maternal mortality in Africa from 870 deaths per 100,000 live births in 1990 to 460 in 2013, a 40% reduction. But challenges remain. Amina Mohamed is the UN Secretary General's Special Advisor on post-2015 development planning.
This is a moment in history where we are learning the lessons of the Millennium Development Goals and what we need to do to address existing challenges but new complexities in a universal agenda. And for us, 193 countries coming together to express what it is that we need to do to address that, amongst other things, not just the Sustainable Development Goals, but with the means of implementation and addressing the climate change. So 3 big actions, and this, I think, is at the core of it. It is about a universal agenda that is integrated. I think for the first time, we're not putting a Band-Aid on the problem. We're looking at the root causes, and unless we make the investments to look at those root causes, we are going to continue to have the conflicts escalate. We're going to continue to see the damage in the environment, and more people are going to be excluded. Inequality is going to be a mainstay, which is just not sustainable.
The cost of implementing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is estimated at $170 trillion over the 15 years. Now, joining us in the studio for more is Kwame Fosu Louis, an African policy expert and health advisor. Mr. Fosu, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
So let me ask you this. First of all, you heard what Mrs. Mohamed had to say. What is your reaction?
Well, my reaction to that is, first of all, yes, the Millennium Development Goals have in some way helped Africa reduced child mortality and improved maternal health. However, there's much to be done.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about moving, first of all, people should know what the MDG goals are. The MDG goals were created in 2000 at a conference of the United Nations, and the goals, it had 8 major goals to reduce poverty, empower women, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Fundamentally, the MDG goals failed overall. We still have over 1 billion people living in poverty and earning less than $1.25.
But there have been also some progress made, such as a reversal in the rising trend in HIV and AIDS, incidence rate declining from 0.85 to 0.32 from 95 to 2012. So this and other progress have been made.
I mean, yes, generally, and I believe in the course of any nation or in the countries, there would have been progress in these various areas.
Yes.
But we have some fundamental issues for sustainable development to really improve Africa and improve women's status in Africa. There have to be some fundamental changes.
Such as?
And those changes, one, are education. When we talk about improving health for women, it cannot simply be providing contraceptives to women. It has to be also fundamentally building schools for women. In the United States, there are several colleges that were built specifically for women because of this disparity when women were not actually going to college as compared to men. So we had Barnard, we have Wesleyan, we have several elite colleges that were built specifically for women. Regarding the health sector as well, one major issue is breast cancer. Breast cancer.
Non-communicable disease in general.
Exactly. Breast cancer, the highest rates of breast cancer right now are in Africa for women. Well, the highest rates are in Europe. However, the highest rates of death for breast cancer are in Africa. And breast cancer is rising increasingly, and this is by the United Nations own report in 2012.
Yeah. So moving from the MDGs to the SDGs, what do you see as priorities? Very concrete examples, maybe one or two, because we don't have a lot of time.
All right. Concrete examples. First of all, we actually have to build hospitals.
Okay.
After over $15 billion spent on maternal health and over $10 billion spent on family planning, let's take, for example, Ghana. We don't have one new hospital to show for that. It is essential for any nation that's going to improve the health of a nation to actually build hospitals. We cannot just keep providing services and services from abroad that do not really sustain communities in Africa. Okay. Another specific issue is to have actual colleges and universities built for women. Tertiary education is very important. Primary education exists, however, for women to gain power in Africa, they have to be educated. It's not simply, providing lip service to women, talking about empowerment, but it's giving them access to scholarships, giving them access to actual buildings where they can be educated to become physicians, to become lawyers, to become, educators and our next leaders in Africa. So that is very essential. And also, and I always use Ghana for example, for instance, Ghana, and for the first time, we have the first ambassador in Ghana, who is a woman. This hasn't happened to the UN.
Yes.
This hasn't happened since the UN was created.
Yes.
This is a government that is very progressive in promoting women.
So examples of empowering women.
Example of empowering women. It's actually creating avenues such as universities, creating clinics and hospitals that are focused on treating women, but also promoting women as Ghana has done in various ways.
Absolutely, Mr. Fosu. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation on Health Chat, actually, which is a radio program very soon. Kwame Fosu Louis is an African policy expert and health advisor. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the youngest member of the Kardashian clan reaches a milestone. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. Business is brewing at Nigeria's first coffee chain. The coffee business has awakened in Nigeria's capital, Lagos, and this syrup is sweetening the country's first ever coffee shop chain. Cafe Neo opened its doors in 2011 by two brothers who, upon returning home from studies abroad, noticed Nigeria was missing out on the coffee trend. Today, there are 3 stores at the equivalent of $4 for the cheapest cup. The co-founders say the shop caters to Nigeria's growing middle class. And according to their marketing consultant, well, it's a much-needed retreat from the stress of the city. And next up, are you ready to keep up with the youngest member of the Kardashian clan? Reality TV and trendy it girl Kylie Jenner celebrated her 18th birthday last weekend with nearly all of the Kardashian Jenner gang, including Caitlyn, Kris, and Kendall Jenner, along with Khloe, Kourtney, and Kim Kardashian. Kanye West was also there. Kylie's boyfriend, rapper Tyga, gifted the birthday girl with a $320,000 white Ferrari with a big red bow on it. What a gift that is. And finally, an Indian rapper has gone viral with a music video calling on consumer products giant Unilever to clean up alleged toxic waste from a forested southern hill station. Sophia Ashraf's video has had more than 1 million views on YouTube, drawing attention to accusations against a thermometer factory in the town of Kodaikanal that closed down 14 years ago. Set to beat off Nicki Minaj's Anaconda and retweeted by Minaj herself, Ashraf also asks Unilever, a consumer goods company, to compensate workers victims of mercury poisoning. And that's what's trending today. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Have you heard this idiom in American English?
Hit the jackpot.
Does it mean you really hit something?
Hey, thanks for coming to my party last weekend.
I had so much fun. Your new apartment is awesome. And the neighborhood is really cool. Shops, restaurants, and close to your work.
Yeah, I really hit the jackpot.
If you hit the jackpot, you got lucky. It means you got something very valuable. This saying actually comes from card games, where the winner takes home the money people bet to play. Have you hit the jackpot? Let us know. Leave us a comment or write us at learningenglish@voanews.com. You can also find us on Facebook, VOA Learning English. And that's English in a Minute.